Now for our speaker. Thank you so much. I am so excited to introduce him today. He brings 15 plus years of talent and leadership development experience into coaching. He is an internal coach in the capacity of director, global coaching at S&P Global. His focus is to help people when they are faced with making crucial career decisions, be it expanding skills, looking for a new role, navigating organizational change, or managing work relationships, even gaining more autonomy and control in roles that become defining moments in their career. Abhijit is accredited by the ICF as a PCC, certified by Columbia University, and licensed to run psychometric assessments such as Hogan, SDI, and DISC. He's not all cerebral. A fun fact about him is that he loves theater and play acting. And we are so grateful that he's taken time. He has such a busy schedule next week with ICW and communities of practice. And we're grateful to you, Abhijit Bhattacharya, for taking time. Today, he's going to talk to us about models and frameworks and factors that we should be mindful of as we build internal coaching programs. I certainly look forward to learning from your wealth of experiences. We all do. Welcome. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Anna, and hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. I think it was, quite a bit, but I'm really amazed to see the host of events, that's happening. And I'm also in the board of the ICF Hyderabad chapter, so I'm taking a lot of inspiration from all of you to do, something similar. So wonderful. So to talk about internal coaching, let me start sharing my screen, and you can let me know um, when you can see my screen. Yeah. So this is what happens, right? We do all the tech check and everything, and then we don't find the slide. Yeah, but while I bring that up, I also, wanted to set some context, to share it. Um, so of course, internal coaching, it is, quite talked about, right? So what you're going to see today is not just only my experience of running an internal coaching program, but also doubling up as an internal coach, but also a little bit of the history of internal coaching and how it came to be what it is today, and also some theory around internal coaching, because I personally feel that this practice of coaching, whether internal or external, needs to be grounded in more research and evidence, uh, because the stalwarts in this industry have sometimes commented that this is a profession without a discipline, or the practice runs ahead of its supporting theories. So I'll bring in, some of that academic research also in today's conversation, if that's okay with all of you. And so with that, I wanted to check, are you able to see my screen now? Is it all cooking?
Yes,
Okay,
looks good.
wonderful. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for that confirmation. So with that, if I can roll. So this is the context of uh, or the history of, internal coaching. And so if you look at this all, started in 2010 in Google, of course, that is where, a lot of things have started, isn't it? So they were doing this Project Oxygen, and a lot of information was coming out of it. But this really happened as an offshoot, not from uh, that project, but really someone who liked, giving career advice in her team, saying that now I'm going to offer it to a whole lot of other people, even outside the team. So I'm going to offer office hours. And that's how it all started. And then Google quickly realized the demand, for that sort of, coaching, and they put something together which is called as the Career Guru program. Um, and of course, they today, if you look at it, they've more than 350 certified internal coaches, and people can reach out to them over Google Hangouts and have career conversations. Now, of course, there is a little bit of a criticism to that isn't, sufficient training that the coaches get, and it's more advice. It's really not coaching. But there is no denial that that's where organizations really started to kind of feel or think that this could be something that organizations could do. But very quickly in 2011, you see EMCC starting a special interest group around internal coaching. And by 2013, they had dedicated a specific area on their website around internal coaching. And interestingly, ICF jumped in as well. So in 2020, in the global survey that they conduct pretty much every year, so in 2020, for the first time, they started asking people that if they were an internal coach. And so 17% of people said that they were both an internal and an external coach, but 54% said that their major responsibilities were around internal coaching. And we see a little change in that number in the 2023 survey, where 16% said both they do, both internal and external coaching, but 56% this time around said that their responsibilities include more of internal coaching. So that's a brief history, as to how internal coaching really started and, where we are today. Now, definitely, we need to talk about the definition of internal coaching. Now, we all understand that the definition piece is quite a fuzzy piece in coaching, isn't it? They say that, there are as many definitions as many coaches in coaching. But the purpose of the definition is that it serves it's really universal and it's really applicable. So those are the two components that really drive the definitional strength of anything, in this world. Now, if you look at a lot of definitions, and there are many definitions of coaching, you see that most of these satisfy 3 Ps, or either of the 3 Ps or one of the 3 Ps. And so that is purpose, the first P. The second is the people it serves, or the third is a description of the process of coaching. So I just want you to be mindful of that while we see how the definition of coaching has evolved throughout the years. And so if we look at it, in 2001, there was the first attempt by Frisch to define, what internal coaching is. And he defined it as a one-on-one developmental intervention supported by the organization and provided by a colleague of those coached, who is trusted to shape and deliver a program yielding individual professional growth. So quite wordy, but I think, there is that first attempt made by Frisch. And he also, kind of published a paper, The Rise of Internal Coach, in 2001, which almost, became a defining moment in the history of internal coaching. And since then, there have been more attempts. So if you see in 2005, Carter, and this was almost in complete defiance, I assume, said that the internal coach is comparable in every sense to the external coach, with the exception that the internal coach is an employee of the same organization as their coachees. So very interesting. Says that there's no difference between an internal and external coach. There's just only one difference, that the internal coach is an employee of the same organization as the coachee. Come 2006, we see that the definition is evolving a little bit, and we see that individualized relationship-based dialogues that promote learning from on-the-job experience and have as their goal improving the short-term or the long-term effectiveness of coachee and as such his or her organization. So these are, certain definitions in the very early days of internal coaching. And then if we really distill these definitions, what we see is that, there are certain commonalities in these definitions. And if we look at the framework and the commonalities in the framework, it is that it is a learning and development activity that is delivered by one employee to another. It is also very analogous to external coaching. And of course, there is the acknowledgement that there are two clients, the coachee and the organization that the coachee belongs to. But of course, the coach also belongs to the same organization. But the coach is really serving two clients, very much, like the external coach, both the coachee and the organization. And there is one very distinct element to this, that the coach needs to be outside the chain of command of the coachee. Um, and so you see this, that the ICF also, kind of follows this framework. Managerial coaching is considered significantly different from internal coaching and is bucketed, a little, differently. And some of you may know that if you are a manager and coaching your team members or your direct reports, that may not count towards the coaching hours that you submit, for your accreditation. So the coach being outside the chain of command is an important element. So internal coaching in that way is different from managerial coaching. And here is what I'd like to call out at this point. There are newer forms of internal coaching that are coming up, or that have been there for a while, but has not yet been integrated completely to the idea of internal coaching. And one of those is peer coaching. Of course, there is a lot of benefit in peer coaching, as the latest research is showing us. But still, at this point in time in the coaching world, peer coaching is not considered as internal coaching in the sense, the way, we are talking about internal coaching today. So considering all of these elements in the framework, the definition in 2014 then evolved into an individual within an organization who has received formal training in coaching skills, operating within a structured coaching arrangement without formal authority over the coachee, who facilitates the personal and professional growth of others. And at this point, I'd like to take a pause and just check with you. You're all coaches, perhaps, or at least, have some background in coaching. Are you noticing the difference in the definitions from the early years versus, what came to be in 2014? Are you noticing any significant difference?
So sure, Maureen Keene here. I'm gonna say, to me, the most important thing I noticed was the addition of being outside the chain of command. And I think that's a very important idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the key elements. So they had to, put it in the definition. But anything else you're noticing?
It talks about.
Go ahead.
It does talk about the formal training and coaching skills, and I don't know if I saw that in others.
Yes, that too, which means that, well, you cannot be a coach if you haven't received formal training. So emphasizing on that point of education for coaching. Yeah, anything else?
Well, I'm Patricia Leonard, and this is very interesting because I was thinking something else. But the organization that I worked for, we didn't call them internal coaches. We simply, but I was a coach inside a Fortune 500 company years ago, and I've been retired for a number of years. But you know what I thought? I mean, this is how naive I am about this. And I do coaching all the time, but mostly from an artistic not autistic, but artistic standpoint. And one thing that I was thinking this was about, and this is because I haven't done enough research, is I was thinking I'm more focused now on the spiritual, the mental, the physical, and the soul connection of individuals. And that's where I'm coaching a lot now in private practice. So I was thinking this was more focused on the internal aspects of a human being because you can see my book up there is Hello Self, and it's getting to know themselves. So I don't know, maybe I'm way off on being here. I don't know.
Yeah, but thank you for sharing. Yeah, so this topic is really about coaching within organizations, which is called as internal coaching
Yeah,
in the coaching world. But
yeah.
thank you for sharing. Yeah, and so the primary difference, if you really notice, is that in the early years they were trying to define the process of coaching, and by 2014, they really took a turn and they started defining an internal coach and not the process of coaching anymore, which is really quite distinct because, like I said, typically of the many definitions that are out there, they either try to address purpose, the people who are benefiting from coaching, or the process of coaching. But in internal coaching, it seems like it's quite anomalous that they define the internal coach. So this is the definition that we adopted when we set up our internal coaching practice, or the coaching COE, Center of Excellence in S&P Global, because each and every element of this definition from T-Boom and others really resonated with us. The formal training and coaching skills that you did mention or did highlight, structured coaching arrangement without formal authority over the coachee. And of course, the objective is to facilitate personal and professional growth of uh, our colleagues within our organization. So with that, if we then look at the elements of setting up a coaching practice, the first, of course, is coach selection and training, because, of course, there needs to be a lot of, I would say, processes, or very robust processes, to identify the competencies of a coach, or at least the coaching cadre. Now, so when we did it, we definitely kind of looked at um, not necessarily if people have had coaching education, but some competencies, uh, and these are not ICF competencies that I'm talking about, but these are more competencies around people orientation, um, willingness to support, and those sort of competencies, really foundational competencies. But of course, everyone who became a part of the coaching cadre, who would offer coaching to others in the organization, were put through some rigorous training. And like you heard, so I went to Columbia University, Teachers College, and went through a year-long program, which is almost the equivalent of an undergrad sort of a program. Um, yeah, and so that sort of competencies is what was built, over a period of time. So that is the first thing that matters: selecting the coach and giving them the necessary education for the coaching to really exhibit, coaching competencies. And a lot of other organizations may have what they call internal coaching programs, but in certain cases, we have observed that it does not satisfy this element. So I was talking about the Google's, Global Career Guru program. And in fact, when we figured out, it was just 3 hours of training and just a grow model, uh, which is, yeah, not a bad start. But of course, it doesn't go to the depths of what you would expect a coach to demonstrate in terms of competencies. Well, the second element is definitely the program expectations and design. Uh, it could be very simple, as it looks, but of course, without very clear expectations and the design, um, it could be a recipe for failure. And so, yeah, different organizations have different expectations from their coaching programs. Many of the big four accounting firms actually focus on leadership coaching. A lot of other organizations focus on performance coaching. At S&P Global, we primarily focused on career coaching. So the expectations was that we as coaches will support people to think about their careers. And that is also because at that time, the narrative around careers was changing quite a bit. So I'm talking about back in 2019. It was like the narrative was everyone owns their careers, which is definitely, at least, to a lot of people, could sound very empowering and liberating, but without proper support, they might not be able to make the most of it. And we were hearing that across the organization, that it's great that, we own our careers, but we don't know how to go about it. And so we need support. And so that is how, we set up the Coaching Center of Excellence. And the expectation was very clear that it will help people think about their careers and navigate their careers in a large organization like this. And as a result of it, we might see um, a bit more internal mobility happening within the organization. Now, design, of course, there is some sort of a set structure for design, isn't it? Oh, 6 months, 12 sessions, or 1 year, X number of sessions. And so we've seen that external coaching has always, followed design. Of course, there's been some flexibility, but typically it has been prescriptive in terms of design. And so again, whatever design you choose for setting up your internal coaching, it's really dependent on the context of the organization and what you're trying to achieve or what your expectations are. But giving some emphasis and some thought about design is really, really important. So we designed it in a pretty offbeat manner, if I can say that. We did not, specify any number of sessions or any duration that anyone, who's coming to coaching must, abide by. We said, well, if you need one conversation, so be it. If you need, 12 conversations over a year, so be it. So we really gave the autonomy to the people to make that choice depending on what their topic or what their goals are related to that topic. And that really helped us in a certain way, because when we started out, we were just, 3 coaches, and it wouldn't have been possible for us, to coach everyone in the organization if everyone turned up. And also that is because by design, we made this self-initiated, which means, there wouldn't be any nomination for coaching. If people want to um, receive some coaching, they can write to the coaching team directly and they could receive it. No approvals required, no nominations. And of course, it was strictly confidential. And I'll talk about confidentiality in a bit, but we designed it in a way that no data flows out of the coaching team to anyone, at least no individual data, but we would report only aggregate numbers. So yeah, so that was about the design. The next thing, of course, confidentiality. In internal coaching, it is tested a lot more frequently than in external coaching, because it's just, I think, how people think that, oh, external coaches, they come, they coach, and they go away. Yeah, but internal coaches, they're within the organization. Oh, they may have, very close relationship in this organization because they're very much a part of this organization. They're sat in a specific team more often than not, HR or human resources team. So what are they doing with, what I'm telling them? Who are they sharing it with? Will it in any way or manner flow back, to my manager or to my, line of command? So it gets, tested a lot more frequently. And as I was mentioning, as a part of the design, we really said that no individual data flows out of the coaching team. All that goes out is aggregated data and related demographics. For example, how many people in America versus how many people in Europe, Asia, and which business group, how many people, and all of that. But data would never be identifiable against an individual. The other, of course, in the contracting. Now, as you see, internal coaching, these are not paid for appointments. So there isn't really budget you can squander away, at least, not on paper. So it is really very important, to kind of take note of that and really see that, how do you drive the importance of the contract, and then, of course, adhering to that contract. So contracting becomes, I would say, a lot more complicated in an internal coaching setup and scenario. And that has happened to us, at least in the early days. We had a chemistry conversation. People said, well, great, yeah, we will book you, for next 2 sessions and next 2 months, and no invites came, which would really never happen in an external coaching engagement because other people would be involved. Yeah, invoices would have been paid, so someone would follow up. And so initially we thought we will follow up and we'll see, what's happening, but we very quickly realized that we just can't keep up. So we focused on how to contract better and really, make the contract super, super tight, and also really check for commitment during the contracting phase. The yet another, topic, sponsor roles. Yeah, we of course, talk about it, but it still, remains quite underused in many organizations. We were very fortunate to have our chief purpose officer and our chief executive officer really throw their weight behind this, but not just them, also the board. But this is also what we noticed, that maybe, after 1.5 years, when it had kind of, taken off. And this is learning, in hindsight, so that if you are ever thinking of, setting up an internal coaching practice, you don't commit the same mistakes that we did. We really did not, utilize sponsors so very often and as much, as we could have used. So really getting in executive sponsors, helping them, talk to the people, and maybe even engage in some disclosure if it's possible, that yes, you know what, I, as CXO, whosoever, have a coach, so why not you? And really, kind of help people see the benefit of coaching. So there is this, change curve that we have seen, that how people adopt to change. So usually, when you introduce a change, there's 2.5% of people who really jump at it because they're the experimenters, and then some people trudge along, and then there are other people who are sitting on the fence, and then some people who really resist it. So I think the experimenters really jumped on early in our case. But for us, to get the people who are sitting on the fence, could have been much easier if you would have leveraged sponsors a lot better. So yeah, sponsor roles remain very, very crucial. And then I want to talk about assessments, because there's a wide range of feedback tools available internally to the internal coaches, because they have the performance management system, all the employee history and data related to that. So there's a lot that they can quickly gather about the coachee without running too many assessments, or needing to gather too much of data from various sources. So that's one element that really works in favor of internal coaches. Really gathering feedback quickly through a wide range of data that's available about the coachee in the organization. And so if these are the elements, I wanted to then really talk about the advantage of internal coaching. And this is just not in our case, but also across various organizations. So reports are saying that if you have an internal coaching practice, it's actually 3x less costly as compared to external coaching. So which means then more people could be covered with the same cost. And I think that is something that organizations have started to realize, and we see a lot of organizations setting up their internal coaching practice, because at least this is a huge I would say benefit that the organizations can reap, and it's an incentive for them. But also a lot of organizations are taking that incentive but really distributing that incentive by adding more people to their coaching program. And so that's where you see that it can be applied more deeply. In our organization in S&P Global, it is this coaching program is open to anyone and everyone across grade levels or seniority, across tenure. So even if you have joined in today, you can access the career coaching program. If you're planning your retirement and if you've been with us for 35 years, you can access the career coaching program. You may be an analyst, you can still access it. You could be the CFO, you could still access it. So because there is a cost savings, and because internal coaches, I mean, at least full-time internal coaches can dedicate a lot more time with the same cost, it can be applied more deeply and can be democratized and taken beyond the boardrooms. Of course, there's faster initial progress. That is because internal coaches, we've noticed, take less time to understand the context of the coachee's topic, or what they're bringing to the table. They understand, the internal processes, systems. Also, have a greater understanding of the organizational culture, climate. So at least, for the initial phase, the progress is pretty quick, and which may be really, I would say, a huge bonus for the coachee, because a lot of times in the case of internal coaching, people who are coming to internal coaching are really coming here to test it. Like, is this for me? Or is this modality something that I could benefit from? And so if they see that quick initial progress, it might kind of give them the confidence to do this even more. Yeah, and so no need to overmeasure, because of course, as internal coaches, there is a lot of access to data, which I already spoke about. So a lot of data is available from the HR systems, as a result of the performance management systems, or even at times, the coachee may have taken some sort of assessments at some point in time, which is very much available within the systems. So at least in the initial phase, there is no need to overmeasure or put the coachee through a series of assessments or feedback gathering 360s and stuff like that, because the feedback is very readily available. And yeah, the last point, at least if not the last point, but this another important point that I want to talk about. So of course, we are looking at this advantage from the benefit of the coachees, but what about the coach? And so in 2012, yeah, if I'm not wrong, there was a very, I would say, important research published that if coaches do the work, what do the work do to the coaches? And so it was found that coaches feel a sense of gratitude and a sense of belongingness and a sense of intentional purpose the more they coach. Of course, the research, when it was not done for full-time coaches, but it was for internal coaches who were doubling up as coaches or providing coaching as a part of their day job, but that was not their only day job. They had other responsibilities. But that is what it was found, that it makes people who are offering coaching a better organizational citizens, but also provide them a lot more satisfaction and connection and belongingness to their job, or to their organization, to their workplace. And so that is from the coachee and the coach's perspective. But what about the organization? The real benefit for the organization here is that the more there is internal coaching practice, the coaching culture of the organization becomes stronger and stronger. There is an opportunity to embed coaching in pretty much everything that an organization does, not just with their people, but also with their stakeholders, with their communities, with their shareholders, and so on and so forth. And this is what Peter Senge, in his book, The Fifth Discipline, really called out as the learning organization. And he said the characteristic of the learning organization is that it just not only engages in participative awareness, where a lot of people are participating in discussions, conversations, and there is awareness generated from it, but the learning organization is actually able to tap into reflective awareness, where the organization as a whole is reflecting a lot more, and there is awareness generated, which is very, very useful for the organization. So yeah, that's the real benefit for the organization, a robust coaching culture, embedding coaching in everything that they do, and really becoming that learning organization. So at this point, maybe I'll take a pause and see what's coming up in terms of questions. Do we have anything that's bubbling up for any of you? Oh, I think no. So, oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
I'm curious, how long did it take you from the beginning of developing your program at S&P to this place where it was fully adopted into your organization? It's quite impressive.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. So yeah, we started thinking about this beginning of 2019, but then we experimented in small pockets because it was really an experiment. We didn't know, how people would take it, how they would really embrace it or not. They'd really say, well, this is a waste of time. So we did, really small group experiments until around June, July of 2019. And then, when we started seeing the results and the feedback, started coming through, we gathered more confidence that, yes, this is something that we would like to offer to a broader range of people. So in September 2019 is when we formed officially the coaching COE, and we recruited people. But then, of course, we had to put the framework together, the model together, how would this be operationalized, all of that. So that took us until the end of January 2020. And so that's when we were ready to launch this globally. Again, without knowing how the entire organization would react to it, because the sample always doesn't tell you, how the population would behave. So we did it. But all of us know that January 2020, people were actually thinking of something else. It was COVID, right? So we were like, oh my God, this is not going to fly, because career is not what is going to be on people's mind. And definitely, this is something new to them. This will go to the back burner because they have other things to think about. And so, by March, when we started in looking at the usage and the outreach and, all of that, we were pretty surprised and, pleasantly surprised. Well, actually, in some ways, and as months, passed by, COVID for some reason brought career or the topic of careers in the front burner for people, because I think, people were having some sort of a realization because they were working from home, and, things were changing. I mean, if not in everyone, but in a lot of people. So yeah, surprisingly, and like I said, and it was a pleasant surprise, coaching came to the forefront and people started using this more and more and more. And around, by the end of 2021, we had seen a full integration of this for our people. People knew that this was there. They knew that, they could take advantage of it. And we started seeing in 2021, for the first time around the second quarter 2021, that people would come to us and say, oh, one of my colleagues told me that this was there. Or, oh, my manager recommended that I take advantage of this. But until then, it used to be really, oh, it was in the town hall that I got to know that this exists, or it was in the intranet that I saw that it exists. But really, quarter two of 2021 is when we started seeing that there are being references made, there are being endorsements made. And so that gave us the idea that this is really integrating. Yeah, does that answer what you were looking for, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's really great. I am curious though if S&P also incorporates external coaches into the framework and model of the internal program, particularly.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm curious about that too.
Yes, we do. We do. And we work with a wide range of vendor partners when it comes to external coaching. That is because, look, I mean, not every situation is ripe for internal coaching. And sometimes, not every topic or every person, needs to go for external coaching, right? I mean, it needs to be a blend, and they can very well coexist. And it has been the case, sometimes, people who have never had experience of coaching, they said, you know what, especially, mid-level managers, so let me try internal coaching and see what this is and see, how helpful this is. And if I really, find it to be useful, then maybe I'm going to make a case, to avail external coaching. So yeah, it's really been a blend. But if you look at the numbers, I would say it's around, 60-40 now. 60% coaching happens internally, 40%, happens externally. But those are, really the whole number, yeah. But if you look at certain levels, we see until mid, career, until, mid manager level, more coaching happens internally. But as we go, towards the C-suite or, -1, -2, more coaching, still happens externally over there. Right.
Abhijit, we have
Yeah.
a couple of comments that are in the chat. Karen is curious about leveraging sponsors and what surprises did you find?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that. So, yeah, I think, at least, when we were beginning, right? We thought that we will need to produce a lot to convince our sponsors that this works and, this is good for the organization to do. But we were really surprised it. So, because, that those were the initial days, we were going and reviewing this with really the C-suite almost, yeah, every quarter. And so in the second quarter, we met the board of directors, and we presented the numbers to them and some feedback to them that we had received, from our coaches about the program, and also a success story that someone, who felt stuck in a role because of coaching, they thought about, something, and they had been able to move to a different part of the organization. And the board in the board of director, we have that someone is responsible for some areas. So the person who's responsible for people and development said, this, you do it, you need more resources, you need more money, you need more budget, just come to it, I'll sign it. And so that was really, like it took us by surprise. It was like, wow, that. And I think, that we've been able to make it a success is because we had that very unconditional, if I may use that word, yeah, unconditional support from, yeah, not just our C-suite, but also from our board of directors. And really, they went and, spoke about this at various forums, even externally. As a result, we got featured in one of the Gartner studies, which I think during COVID times, they surveyed around 72 organizations across the globe, and they picked 8 initiatives which were really cutting edge, and which was, kind of meeting the human need. And so career coaching, featured in one of those. We also, were featured in a Harvard HBR article that how can career coaching help, for how can career coaching be helpful for people to move around the organization a lot more, yeah, for internal mobility opportunity.
Mhm. One more
Yeah.
question before you continue from Sarah. She's had her hand up. Sarah
Yeah.
Oshik.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up the topic of confidentiality again, because it is so tricky. How do you navigate that? Because I brought up internal coaching with my CEO before, and he's very hesitant about it just because of confidentiality and employees being either feeling reluctant to share because information may be distributed, or they'll bring up later, well, I did share excuse me, I did share this information with the company, and they knew this about me and they didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I know it's like a tricky, it's a tricky thing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Sarah. And of course, we'll talk about that in detail. Yeah, the dilemmas in internal coaching. But to your question, yes, yeah, there are 2 points to it, or I would say really, 2 phases to it. One is the confidentiality, or the trust in confidentiality from the employees. And we did experience that because at least in the beginning, at least for the first 6 to 8 months, or maybe even a year, we would constantly hear our coaches ask, so yeah, when you say confidential, what does this mean? Who gets to know, what we're sharing here? And they just ask that, and we'd say, no one, just you and I. Yeah, no one even gets to know that you and I had a conversation, because that's the way we designed it. We would never, report that XYZ from XY or ABC business group, has spoken to us. We'd just, give aggregated numbers. But they didn't know any of that. They didn't know how it was reported. They didn't know, what was captured. So they'd constantly ask us. But I think, after a year, when people started realizing that, yeah, no one came and asked me anything about that, or no one mentioned anything fleetingly that I may have said in that conversation, and no one else was supposed to know, their confidence started, growing. And it was more of a reliability, thing. So it was built over a period of time, and we have been tested quite a few times, because someone from some business would have come and, like really ask us, sometimes in the corridor or sometimes over mail, hey, could you let me know who from my group has taken advantage of this? Because I wanted to go and tell in the town hall that, guys, this is there, but I need to know, who really took advantage of this. Like, nope. Yeah. You encourage them without knowing who took advantage of this. Encourage everyone. Yeah, there's no problem. So yeah, we really had to fend that off. And there was a trade-off, because we did not share any data. There could have never ever been any targeted encouragement that anyone could provide in this organization, but we were okay with that trade-off. Yeah, we really did not feel the need, and sometimes we did, but maybe we curbed our feeling that, yeah, I mean, people who haven't yet taken advantage of this, should we give them a nudge saying that, hey, our data shows that you haven't taken. We didn't do that. So yeah, could we have reached more people if we would have done that? Maybe. But because this was very self-initiated, and by it was a conscious choice in the design that it will not be through nomination, or like, oh, my manager sent me to this space. It was not that. We said, if this is self-initiated, when people feel the need for it, they will. Yeah, and that's what we hear now. I mean, we always ask this. Oh, well, how did you get to know about this? Because we're always curious to what channel of communication is really working. And they say, yeah, I knew this for a while, at least for the last 2 years, but yeah, I thought that now is when I need it. So yeah, people know and they'll use it. But the confidentiality in terms of the other bit, which is, look, at the end of the day, we are a team. We are working in this organization, and if I may say, change the preposition to for the organization, we need to show something, right? That, what is this all about? Otherwise, they'd stop the funding. We're really a bootstrap startup within this large organization. So that was, something that we ran our brain around, that what data would be helpful for the organization. Mm-hmm. What sort of metrics, do we really need to show? So yeah, we said the number of sessions, the number of unique individuals, and the number of hours. That's really what the organization needs, at least in that phase when we were really trying to track adoption. Of course, as our coaching model, matures, there are now, a variety of other metrics, that we track. For example, the rate of internal mobility, or employee turnover, or if it's really now almost like a control group experiment. So people who are going through coaching, are they claiming more bonus awards, or are they getting more merit hikes than the people who are not coming into coaching, and stuff like that. So we now have some advanced metrics, but yeah, really the organization doesn't need to know who came and what they spoke about. What they really need to know is, well, if we are financing this, if we are investing in this, what is the benefit that we as an organization are reaping? But look, I totally understand that at the end of the day, it comes down to persuading, convincing the stakeholders there. And yeah, it's a matter of conversation, or series of conversations rather. Sorry, Anna, you are on mute.
Yes, we have a couple of other questions, but we'll allow you to continue on with your presentation.
Yeah.
Ask them later.
Yeah, maybe we do that and we save it. Okay, thank you. So the debate, right? And we almost, I think, have segued into the debate with Brenda's question. So which one is better, internal coaching or external coaching? What is the research telling us about that? The research is divided because, to be honest, there has hardly been any research done around internal coaching. Very, very few pieces of research. The sample size is really low. So yeah, there is no validity and replicability of that research. But of the very few research that has been done, it has been conducted by the same team, strangely, yeah? So Jones, Woods, and Guillem, and Rebecca Jones, who actually heads up the coaching education program at Henley Business School. So she and her team did this in 2016, and they actually found out, well, clients had better results working with internal coaches. But of course, the sample size was really small, as I said. So they could really dive and do some qualitative analysis as well. And what they found out, that what made that instance really better for internal coaches was the coach's knowledge of the organizational culture. And for some reason, that very organization was not very receptive to external coaching. There isn't, much said about that, but for some reason. But the first point, really matters, that the coach was really able to bring in knowledge of the organizational culture, which to me sounds like the coach quickly had the context of what the coachee was bringing in terms of topic and in terms of where, they wanted to operate. But just a year, or yeah, it was published in 2018, but the research happened in 2017. The same group or the same team of researchers found out, no, that was not true. Working with external coaches produced better results. And that was, I think, Sarah, what you were highlighting, that there is increased comfort levels in sharing info with external coaches. People really did not have to think that, oh, am I oversharing? Where is this information going to flow? And so on and so forth. But also, what was really, worked in favor for external coaches here, that the clients were able to select their coaches. And this is something that does not happen quite often in internal coaching. In internal coaching, if you're a coachee, you're just assigned a coach. Yeah, and that's because the pool is really small. You really don't have too many coaches to choose from, depending on bandwidth, depending on time zones, and a lot of other factors. Most internal coaching programs do not offer the choice of coaches to the coachee. They just, do the pairing all by themselves, and they say, here you go, here's your coach. And so I think, that is what is to learn from external coaching, because coaches like to have that autonomy, to have that freedom to choose who they would like to be paired with. Now, it is a different thing that research shows that people typically choose who they find more commonalities with, and that has no bearing on the outcomes of coaching. That's a different thing. But that very liberty or autonomy or whatever, the control, whatever you call it, actually make coaches feel that they have been, paired with someone who can serve them or support them better. So that's to learn. So setting up an internal coaching program, please see how you can offer that choice to your coachees. Initially, we couldn't, but now we have a sort of a platform where people can go check our profiles, check our availability, and really get paired with who they want to. And this matters, quite a bit. I've seen a lot of people from the US really, kind of pair with me. And when I asked them, strangely, they would say, well, because you're in India. And I thought, maybe you understand the technology world better. Whether I do or not, that doesn't really matter. But we've also, seen quite a few times people from Philippines talk to someone in the US and said, I really wanted to talk to a woman because I'm a woman. Yeah, so the choice or having control of the choice really matters. Now, the different dilemmas of internal coaches. Yeah. So first of all, boundaries. And this is where I was also I was alluding to this when I was talking about design. Now, what is it that is permissible in internal coaching? That is something that we really want to be very, very mindful of. I've had, and speaking from personal experience, I've had, people come to me and say, well, you know what, I'm going through a divorce and that's impacting my work, and I think my career is slipping by. Now, yeah, the question really is, can I coach that person? Well, maybe I can. Do I coach that person? Where's the boundary? So we need, very clearly defined boundaries. Otherwise, it could lead to a lot of, dilemmas, for the coach, like, do I not? What topics? Yeah, but also sometimes really referring if the topic is beyond not just what as an organization framework permits, but also if it is beyond the coach's capability. Yeah, it could still be very, very permissible by the organizational framework, but if it is beyond the capability of the coach, then where do we draw the boundaries, and how do we draw the boundaries? Because look, in internal coaching, it may quickly feel for the coachee that, oh, I was denied the opportunity to coaching, although a lot of my colleagues or every other colleague has access to coaching. So I think, boundary is really something that we need to contemplate more about. The second, of course, power differentials. Yeah. And this, again, is the context of the organization, the culture of the organization, all of that, comes to play. But if you're coaching, someone way junior to you, and that person knows that you are sat up in the hierarchy, how does that, really affect how the coachee approaches the conversation? Or contrary to that, if you're coaching, someone who is sat above you in the hierarchy, what does that do to your coaching mindset in that conversation? Yeah, does it change the way you would approach the coaching otherwise? So power differentials, and sometimes that also lends to confidentiality. You as a coach, as an internal coach, or as a part of the human resources team, or you are privy to certain information, or you are getting to know certain things from someone you are coaching who is perhaps senior to you or junior to you or whatever, and you're not supposed to be privy to that information. There is no way you can unhear it now. So what do you do in such cases? Yeah, because of those power differentials. So that is something, again, to contemplate about. Confidentiality, I think we've spoken about it, how much we share, with whom we share, how we share, all of that matters. And the last, and this is sometimes it appears as a conflict in the mind of the coach, that you are an organizational citizen, you are very much a part of that organization. So when someone comes and tells something about that organization, or rather, if I may use the word, complains about the organization, what does that do to you? Because you have a certain view of the organization. It may not be in sync with your view. So what does that do to you? Yeah. Or if you're seeing that, oh, there is something that is, yeah, really not right, and it shouldn't be happening that way, then there is an urge to coach the system, right? Because you want the system to be better as well. So which are those scenarios where you defend the system or where you coach the system? And really the dilemma is like, is that even the role of the coach? Yeah, maybe not. But is that the role of an employee in the organization? Maybe it is. So how do we draw a line, between those two personas of being a coach and being an organizational employee? And yeah, where does that blend? So those are, various dilemmas. And in the interest of time, if you are okay, I'll just, show you a case study. Yeah. Modified a little bit, but quite real. So like they say in the movies, inspired by true events. So I'm not going to read this out, but yeah, just go over it, maybe glance through it, and think, if you were an internal coach, would you report this or would you not? Yeah, I'm seeing some eyebrows getting raised. Yeah, and so you don't have to answer, whether you would report it or not. You can keep the answer, to yourself. But really, how do we make that choice, whether we report it or not, right? I mean, as coaches, and if you think about the logic we apply when it comes to ethics, and I'm not talking about morality here, but more about, ethics. So there are, really two ways. One, we think about the consequence, right? What would be the consequence of me reporting this, which is focusing on objective outcomes, the what would ensue. So that's one way of thinking. The other way of thinking is, oh, what would a coach do in this situation? Yeah. And so what we have found is, of course, when it comes to consequence, internal coaches typically think if there is something that puts the organization at risk, then it definitely needs to be reported. But if it puts the individual at risk, it is the individual's choice. Of course, they encourage the individual to report it, but it's typically the individual's choice whether to report it or not. However, when it comes to appropriateness, that, oh, would another coach like me report it? They're actually thinking about, would an external coach report it? They're not thinking if an internal coach would have reported it, because they do not have that reference point yet, because internal coaching is still quite limited. Yeah, and so that's all I had to share for today. I know we're left with little time, but I'm happy to take questions, and maybe I'll stop the sharing now.